Hello BookTube, I'm Vanessa and today I'm going to be doing a really late combined wrap up for the months of December, January, and February. I kind of didn't read a lot in the months of December and January. I was like in a reading slump, so I figured there was no point of doing a wrap up when I only read like 2 books or whatever. So yeah, I'm behind on wrap ups, but February really helped me get back in the swing of things and I was reading a lot. There were a lot of really fun readathons that really helped me so much and I'm so grateful for them. The Unicorn readathon and the Time Hopathon and the In Love-a-thon for Valentine's Day. They were all just so fun and I did end up reading some pretty good books in February. So this is just going to be a combined wrap up of all of them. So the one book that I read in December was A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, and I guess if you're only going to read one book in December, it might as well be this one. I read this for Jasmine from Novel Thoughts' book club, the Novelty Book Club, and we did like a live show about it and talked about stuff, so that was really fun. If you want to hear more in-depth thoughts, I think the live show should still be up on her channel. And I know that we're all kind of like generally familiar with the idea of A Christmas Carol, but I actually had never read the actual thing before, so I'm glad that I got to do that. And then the one book that I read in January was Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach, which is a book that my friend Jessie gave me for Christmas because we had been talking about The Alchemist, which is a book that I love, and he said that it kind of sounded similar to this book, which is a book that he loves, so we kind of like exchanged those books, and I really liked this. I definitely see the similarities with The Alchemist in the sense that it is kind of like a simple, kind of like folk tale-ish, I guess you could say, story that has a lot of like deeper like allegorical messages about life and stuff. This book is about a seagull named Jonathan who all of the other seagulls only care about flying for the purpose of like finding food or getting to the next location or whatever, but Jonathan loves flying like for its own sake, and he is constantly like flying for fun and experimenting and trying to find new ways to fly and ways to be like faster and better and do cool tricks and stuff. And the story is really just about him like pushing those boundaries and wanting to do the things he loves anyway and having passion for learning new things even if other people don't necessarily approve or agree. And then the next book that I finished either at the end of January or possibly the beginning of February, I'm not totally sure, but it was Codename Verity, which I'm doing a somewhat buddy read slash like annotated book swap thing with my friend Murphy, which is super fun. We're basically each reading a book, annotating it, and then sending them to each other for each other to annotate and send back. So we'll each have like a book with both of our thoughts and notes written in it. It's really cool. And my book for that was Codename Verity, and this is a book about 2 women who are friends and they're both involved in World War II in like the British Air Force. One day they're both on a plane that ends up going down in France, which at that point is occupied, and one of them ends up getting captured. And basically part 1 of this book is the collection of letters that she's writing to her captors, giving them information about the army, also somewhat tell the story about how she ended up on that plane and how her and the other girl became friends and all of this. And then part 2 is from the other girl's perspective. Basically, like it says on the cover of the book, it's really like twisty and mind gamey and lots of like unexpected things happen, which is definitely true and I definitely appreciated that about it. However, I did feel like it was a bit of a stretch to say plot twist or like mind games because I didn't think they were that unpredictable. I kind of did see all of them coming and it just wasn't really any like aha super surprising moments, but it still was really cool to see like all of the stories unravel and like come together and all of that. So I did enjoy this book. The next book I read was Of Fire and Stars by Audrey Colthurst, and this is a fantasy story about 2 princesses falling in love, and I thought it was really sweet and really cute. The romance was done super well, I thought. I really enjoyed the romance. As far as the other things in this book, I thought that they were good and I enjoyed them. It is kind of just like your typical like everyday fantasy story. It wasn't really bringing anything new and original to the table genre-wise, but I don't think that it needed to, because I think just the fact of having a female-female romance in an everyday typical fantasy story is already just, it's so valuable. I also read the February pick for the Novelty Book Club, which was Shakespeare's Sonnets, and this edition is so cool. I got it from my library, but I think I want to buy a copy for myself because it is just beautiful. They have like the sonnets and then next to them are paintings, and it's just like, I think it's just a really beautiful and awesome way to present these sonnets, and I really, really liked it. And the sonnets themselves I liked as well. Obviously there's a lot of them and not all of them I cared about, but there definitely were a good handful that really spoke to me and that I took pictures of because I really liked them. I also kind of read the January pick for the Novelty Book Club, which was A Year in Provence. Basically, a guy and his wife decide to move to Provence, France and get like a little house out in the country, and this book chronicles their first year living there and having to like get used to the lifestyle change and like renovate the house and get their little like farm garden thing up and running or whatever. And I mean, it was good. I only read probably about half of it because I was listening to it on audio, and audio just, I don't know, I don't get along with audiobooks very well, but it was good. It was interesting. I'm really intrigued by the idea of like getting a house in the country and like doing everything yourself and stuff like that, so I definitely found it interesting. And also the idea of doing that in like a foreign country is really exciting too, where like you don't necessarily speak the language or know the culture. So I definitely enjoyed what I did read of this book. The next book that I read was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and I loved this so much. And I love Holly Black like in general. When I was in high school I read the Tithe, the Valiant, and Ironside books, and to be completely honest, that book series and Holly Black's take on fairies kind of became my like standard for fairy stories and the idea of like what fairies are and what they mean. I think she just does such a good job of capturing like the duality of fairies and how even though they're like beautiful and enticing, they're also like dangerous and twisted and grotesque. And I just like that she makes these like urban gutter fairies. I don't know, they're so good. This book is about a girl who is a human, but she's being raised in fairy because her, I guess like stepfather you could say, is a fairy. And there's a lot of personal conflict like between her and her sister and her family and like her peers, I guess you could say, that are like fairies. But then there's also a lot of like political conflict going on and like intrigue with like who the crown is gonna go to, and like the royal family is kind of like there's factions forming, and I just eat stuff like that up. Like I can't get enough of stuff like that. So I loved this book, and with how much I loved this book and how much I loved the Tithe series as a teenager, I definitely feel like I need to just go binge read like all of Holly Black's other books soon because I'm definitely a huge fan. Another book I read in February was Reign of the Fallen by Sarah Glenn Marsh, and this is a book that I was super excited for because it is about a bisexual necromancer. I will say that it didn't exactly live up to my expectations. I wasn't super in love with it. I found that while I was reading it, I just wasn't attached because I feel like there was no emotional buildup to these things that are supposed to be like really meaningful and emotional and impactful, but like they're not, because I felt like the author was trying to cram in all of the emotional buildup into the moment where the emotional thing happens. And so the emotions in this book just kind of felt really like forced and unnatural, and stuff was coming out of nowhere because it wasn't built up steadily throughout the story. It was just kind of like randomly inserted. But you know what? At the end of the day, this is still a story about a bisexual necromancer in a world where like dead people get to come back to life and keep living, and there are like zombie monsters, and that's still super interesting. So I would still recommend this, like just on principle. And then the last thing that I finished reading at the end of February were the last 3 volumes of Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. These are sci-fi graphic novels that follow the story of a couple who happen to be from opposite sides of a war. Their planets are at war with each other, and they end up having a kid together and have to kind of like flee through the galaxy to avoid being captured by either of their people because they're considered traitors by both sides, and they're being hunted and like people want to assassinate them. And it's just a really, really cool story, and I'm really emotionally invested in these characters and like their family, and I want this family to like be okay and get to live their life. But I also enjoy reading about all of the like crazy, dangerous situations and adventures that they are in on the way. And there's just so many like interesting characters and like different alien species and stuff like that, and it's just so cool. Not to mention the artwork is just some of the best art that I've ever seen in any graphic novel ever, and I love looking at it while I'm reading this story. My eyes are pleased, my brain is pleased, everything is pleased. So if you're looking for a graphic novel series that is like really fun and really cool, I would highly, highly recommend Saga. Alright, and those are all of the books that I read this winter throughout December, January, and February. I hope you guys like this video. Again, I'm sorry that my wrap-ups have not been consistent the last few months, but I think I'm back in the reading swing of things now, so hopefully they should be coming more regularly. Let me know in the comments what you have been reading lately, and I hope that I get to talk to you soon. Bye!